Welcome to True Crime Talks. Today we uncover the chilling tale of a young woman's affair that ends in murder and dark secrets. Nina Avery, a 24-year-old woman fresh out of college, had just moved to the quiet suburban town of Windermere in search of a fresh start. Life hadn't been kind to her lately. Student loans weighed heavily on her, and her small savings were quickly dwindling as she struggled to find stable work. When she came across an online ad for a live-in housekeeper position, she felt it might be her chance to turn things around. The ad was vague but enticing: good pay, free housing, and relatively light responsibilities. The only catch was that the job was for a reclusive owner who valued discretion. When Nina arrived for the interview, she was stunned by the sheer size of the property. The estate was perched on a hill, its grand stone facade overlooking manicured gardens and a private lake. It felt like something out of a movie, a stark contrast to the cramped apartment she'd left behind. The man who greeted her, Alexander Pierce, was as impressive as the house itself. In his mid-40s, Alexander had an air of quiet authority. He was impeccably dressed, his salt and pepper hair lending him an aura of sophistication. Alexander explained that he traveled often for business, leaving the house mostly empty. He needed someone trustworthy to maintain the property, manage basic cleaning tasks, and occasionally oversee deliveries. It sounded almost too good to be true. As he walked her through the house, Nina couldn't help but be mesmerized by its opulence. Marble floors, chandeliers, and antique furnishings filled every room. Despite the grandeur, there was something unsettling about the place. Certain doors were locked, and Alexander made it clear they were off-limits. He brushed off her curiosity with a polite but firm smile, saying only that they contained sensitive personal items. Nina didn't press further, reasoning that it wasn't her place to pry. Within days of starting the job, Nina settled into a comfortable routine. She cleaned, organized, and took quiet walks around the estate's sprawling grounds. Alexander was true to his word about being absent. He was away most of the time, leaving her to enjoy the solitude. However, whispers in the neighborhood hinted at a darker side to Alexander's life. Evelyn, his estranged wife, had vanished under mysterious circumstances 2 years earlier, though no charges were ever filed against him. Nina dismissed the rumors, choosing instead to focus on her new life. Yet the house itself seemed to hold secrets, and an unease began to creep in. The locked doors, the distant neighbors, and the isolation all felt like pieces of a puzzle she hadn't yet begun to solve. For now, she told herself it was simply a job. Over time, Nina found herself increasingly drawn to Alexander Pierce. Despite their age difference, his commanding presence and charisma were difficult to ignore. What had started as a strictly professional arrangement began to blur when Alexander started paying her extra attention. On the rare occasions he was home, he would invite her to join him for dinner in the grand dining room, something Nina initially found strange but flattering. During these meals, Alexander was always the perfect gentleman, asking about her life, her interests, and her dreams. His genuine interest made Nina feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced before. Over time, the professional boundary that once separated them eroded, replaced by an electric tension neither could deny. The first time Alexander kissed her was on a crisp autumn evening after they'd shared a bottle of wine in the library. It was thrilling, forbidden, and utterly consuming. Their relationship was intoxicating. Alexander showered Nina with gifts, designer dresses, expensive jewelry, and even trips to exclusive resorts. For someone like Nina, who had always struggled to make ends meet, it felt like stepping into a dream. She began to rationalize the situation, convincing herself that their connection transcended societal norms and the judgment of others. But as their affair deepened, cracks began to show. Alexander insisted their relationship remain a secret, claiming it was to protect her from gossip and scrutiny. Nina initially agreed, but his obsessive need for control began to trouble her. He monitored her movements more closely, questioning her if she left the estate without telling him. The first real red flag came when Nina stumbled upon an old photograph of Alexander with a strikingly beautiful woman she didn't recognize. When she asked him about it, he casually mentioned that it was his estranged wife, Evelyn. He dismissed the topic quickly, claiming Evelyn had left him 2 years ago to start a new life overseas. He painted himself as the victim, abandoned by a woman who had grown tired of their marriage. But Nina couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was off. She began hearing more whispers from the locals about Evelyn's mysterious disappearance. While Alexander insisted she had left of her own accord, neighbors seemed to think otherwise. Some said Evelyn had been unhappy, confiding in friends about wanting to leave Alexander. Others hinted at darker suspicions that she hadn't left at all. Despite her growing doubts, Nina found it hard to disentangle herself from Alexander's world. The allure of his wealth, power, and attention kept her tethered, even as she started to question whether she truly knew the man she had fallen for. One rainy evening, while Alexander was away on yet another business trip, Nina found herself alone in the sprawling estate. The emptiness of the house, which had once felt freeing, now seemed oppressive. Her thoughts lingered on the whispers she had heard about Evelyn's disappearance and the inconsistencies in Alexander's version of events. She couldn't shake the feeling that the answers she sought might lie within the locked rooms she had been forbidden to enter. As the storm raged outside, Nina's curiosity got the better of her. She retrieved a small set of keys she had found while cleaning Alexander's study weeks earlier. Her hands trembled as she tried each key on the lock of one of the forbidden rooms. On the third attempt, the door clicked open. Stepping inside, Nina was immediately struck by how out of place the room felt compared to the rest of the house. It was stark, almost clinical, with none of the opulence that defined the rest of the estate. Filing cabinets lined the walls, and a large wooden desk stood in the center. The faint smell of old paper and something metallic lingered in the air. Nina hesitated before approaching the desk, her heartbeat thundering in her chest. On it she found a stack of photographs. At first they seemed innocuous pictures of Alexander and Evelyn from happier times. But as she sifted through them, they became increasingly unsettling. There were photos of Evelyn looking distressed, as though she had been unaware she was being photographed. One image in particular sent a chill down Nina's spine. Evelyn standing in the estate's garden, her eyes wide with fear, as though she had been caught trying to leave. Next to the photographs was a journal. Its leather cover was worn, the pages filled with Alexander's neat but aggressive handwriting. Flipping through it, Nina found entries that revealed a side of Alexander she had never seen. He wrote of feeling betrayed by Evelyn, accusing her of trying to destroy his life. One passage read, "She thinks she can leave me, but no one walks away from me, not without consequences." As Nina continued to search the room, she found legal documents showing that Evelyn had been attempting to file for divorce just before her disappearance. There were also bank statements suggesting large, unexplained withdrawals from accounts jointly held by Alexander and Evelyn. The final discovery was a small, chilling note tucked into a drawer. "The truth is buried where no one will find it." Nina's blood ran cold. She had no doubt now that Alexander was hiding something far darker than she had ever imagined. As she prepared to leave the room, the security system suddenly activated, and the house's exits locked. A voice echoed through the speakers, sending shivers down her spine. "You shouldn't have done that, Nina." When Alexander returned the following morning, he behaved as though everything was perfectly normal. His calm demeanor unsettled Nina even more, given what she had discovered the night before. She struggled to act natural, concealing her fear and unease while he casually asked about her duties during his absence. Deep down, she knew he was aware she had entered the locked room. It didn't take long for Alexander's behavior to change. Over the next few days, he became more controlling than ever. He began monitoring Nina's every move, questioning her relentlessly about where she went, what she did, and why she seemed distracted. His charm, once intoxicating, now felt like a mask hiding something much darker. Nina tried to maintain her composure, but the weight of what she had uncovered gnawed at her. She decided she couldn't stay silent. She needed proof, solid evidence that would expose Alexander for whatever role he had played in Evelyn's disappearance. Nina started photographing the documents and journal pages she had found in the locked room. Late at night, when she was sure Alexander was asleep, she crept back into the room, carefully gathering as much information as she could without leaving a trace. Her discoveries grew more disturbing with each passing night. She uncovered property records for a remote cabin owned by Alexander, one that had never been mentioned in any of their conversations. Among the papers was a map with a red X marked in the woods near the cabin. The cryptic message she had found before the truth is buried where no one will find it took on a horrifying new meaning. As Nina pieced together the clues, she realized the risk she was taking. Alexander had become increasingly suspicious of her, often appearing suddenly in rooms where she was working or lingering outside the doors of the forbidden spaces. His questions became more pointed, his tone more menacing. "You seem distracted," he remarked one evening. "I hope you're not letting your imagination run wild." Nina's breaking point came when she discovered her phone missing. She searched the house frantically but found no trace of it. Without her phone, she felt completely cut off from the outside world. Alexander's grip on her life was tightening, and she knew she had to act quickly. Desperate, she reached out to a neighbor under the guise of borrowing something and managed to send an anonymous tip to the local authorities about Evelyn's disappearance. But her growing fear was confirmed when she returned to the estate and found Alexander waiting for her, his expression dark and unreadable. "Where have you been, Nina?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with an underlying threat. She knew then that he was done pretending. Whatever game they had been playing was about to come to a deadly end. Desperation had fully set in by the time Nina realized there was no way out of the house without confronting Alexander. The walls of the once beautiful estate felt like a cage, the opulence now suffocating rather than alluring. That evening, as the tension in the air thickened, Alexander's demeanor shifted from subtle control to open hostility. He no longer cared to hide his anger or his suspicions. Nina's worst fears were confirmed when Alexander confronted her in the study. On the desk lay the journal she had photographed, the papers she had carefully placed back in their original spots, and the spare key she had used to enter the locked room. His voice was calm, almost eerily so, as he accused her of betrayal. "You're just like Evelyn," he said, his words heavy with disdain. "Always prying, always disloyal." As he spoke, Alexander revealed details that chilled Nina to her core. Evelyn hadn't simply left the marriage she had tried to escape. She had planned to expose Alexander's illegal dealings and manipulations, threatening to destroy his carefully crafted reputation. But Alexander had stopped her. He described how he had lured Evelyn to the remote cabin in the woods, the same one Nina had discovered in his files, and made sure she would never speak out again. Nina tried to stay calm, but the horrifying confession left her paralyzed with fear. Alexander's calm tone gave way to fury as he accused her of trying to do the same. "You've seen too much," he said, stepping closer. "You think you can just walk away from this? From me?" As Alexander advanced, Nina's survival instincts kicked in. She bolted for the door, but Alexander caught her, dragging her back into the room. The struggle was chaotic, with Nina fighting desperately to free herself. She managed to grab a letter opener from the desk, clutching it tightly as Alexander pinned her against the wall. The fight escalated, with furniture toppling and glass shattering. In the chaos, Nina swung the letter opener, slashing Alexander across the arm. He recoiled in pain but lunged at her again, this time with murderous intent. In a final act of desperation, Nina plunged the letter opener into his chest, the force of the blow sending them both crashing to the floor. Blood pooled around Alexander's lifeless body as Nina scrambled to her feet, shaking and gasping for air. She triggered the emergency alarm system, which blared loudly, summoning the attention of neighbors and eventually the police. When the authorities arrived, they found Nina trembling in the corner, covered in bruises and blood but alive. The evidence she had uncovered was enough to link Alexander to Eleg's disappearance and the mysterious fates of other women. The mansion, once a symbol of power and wealth, became a crime scene, its grandeur forever tarnished by the horrors it concealed. For Nina, survival came at a cost, but she had done what so many before her could not. She escaped, and in doing so, she brought justice to the ghosts of Alexander's past.